Let's get corrupted. What is going on, everybody? It's your boy Joe with Meteoric Serpents coming back at you for another episode of the Colubrid Corruption Podcast. Guys, we are back for another week of corruption. Super excited. We have on another repeat guest tonight, someone who's been on, it's been a little over a year. And this person has had some cool success lately with tiger rat snakes, and I hope you've seen the thumbnail already, but we have on Mr. Steven Kush. So this one will definitely be exciting, and I'm looking forward to it. But yeah, let's get through this intro stuff first, guys. We've done a couple pre-recorded episodes in a row, so good to be back live again. But yeah, if you're listening to this podcast, if you've been enjoying it, or if it's your first time here, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe, hit the notification bell so you know every single time a new podcast is dropping. Typically, it's every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. EST. But yeah, and then you could go listen to this show over on your favorite audio podcasting platforms like Apple, Spotify, a couple others as well, all that good stuff. Down below here, you could follow Meteoric Serpents everywhere. That's me. Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, all that good stuff. You could Google search literally Meteoric Serpents or Colubrid Corruption, and my stuff is bound to come up. So yeah, go ahead and do that. Let's see here. Make sure you guys support USARK and USARK Florida. They're the organizations that fight for our rights to keep our reptiles. Super important. You know, I always say even like the cheapest memberships are so inexpensive that you really should support, even if it's on that level. You know, every person counts. So definitely go ahead and do that. Let's see. The first link in the description below goes to the Meteoric Serpents Patreon. There you get some behind the scenes access, some exclusive stuff. If I do pre-recorded podcasts, you get those early. I have one in the bank that I'm very excited about that I recorded yesterday. If you saw my story a couple nights ago, I recorded one yesterday. It's going to be a good one, but it's not coming out till March 16th. You know, so if you go click on that link, you'll probably see who it is, because I think you could see that part at least. But yeah, that's super cool. And plus it's a way to build community. We got a cool Discord group, a bunch of people who are really passionate about colubrids. We kind of just hang out, shoot the shit, and all that good stuff. So yeah, consider joining that. And it supports the show. Helps me put this on every week, and you guys keep me motivated. Appreciate all my Patreon members. And then, so as always, Colubrid Corruption is brought to you guys by the Show Me Reptiles show and the Show Me Marketplace. Guys, whether you're a reptile show attender or a vendor, make sure you check out Show Me Reptiles, the website. It's in the description below. Go find the nearest reptile show to you. And they're the ones who put on Colubrid Fest as well. So thank you, Mickey, for showing the Colubrid community some support there. And then also, if you're a seller of reptiles, you could go check out the Show Me Marketplace and use code corruption-50 to get 50% off your first year's membership to the Show Me Marketplace. Again, that's corruption-50. Let's see. Also, as always, I like to announce it weekly. Colubrid Fest this year, September 12th to 14th at the Allen County War Memorial Coliseum in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Moved from Indianapolis. I think this location is going to be a little more accommodating to everyone. So super excited for that. Again, that's September 12th to 14th, 3-day event. Going to be super fun. I will be there. I will be vending, and it should be a great time. Then before we jump in, I'll quickly say hello to Ed, one of the Patreon members. He's here in the chat tonight. We have our hashtag Colubrid Corruption of the week, and I did get selfish on you guys because I chose my own snake, and this animal is changing a lot. It's getting way too cool. Yeah, and this video got me so jacked about this species. So yeah, here's my little female Phrynonax Pacilinotus. Super cool in that little threat display. Gives you the full scope of colors. So just super excited to have this species. And yeah, but guys, if you want to be featured on a weekly basis, put hashtag Colubrid corruption on your Colubrid posts. And I feature one picture a week. It's a little way to get a shout out and all that good stuff. So yeah, do that. And without further ado, let's bring our guest on for tonight. Once again, we are welcoming Mr. Steven Kush. What's up, man? How are you?
I'm doing all right, man. How's it going?
Pretty good. Pretty good. So yeah, like I said, you're a repeat guest, but it's been a little over a year since I originally had you. So was looking forward to having you back on the show.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And if you guys want to go hear Steven's kind of backstory, you should definitely go tune into the first episode with him, because I don't want to do any of that tonight. I just kind of want to jump right into it.
For sure.
But yeah, Steven, you had success breeding tiger rat snakes this year. You just recently hatched out a clutch. From what I understand and what I see around the community, they're just a super hard species to like get successful clutches out of. Plus, a lot of animals that you see available are just wild caught animals. There's just not a lot of right out there. So I kind of just want to start off right off the bat, starting high. Like, what was that whole experience like? You want to talk about the whole process behind breeding those tiger rats?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, to your point, very few people are producing them with any sort of regularity. I mean, I think in the US, the only person you can really look to is Jason Hood for the last decade or so. Other people have had success kind of intermittently, but it seems like a lot of one-off clutches are 1 and 2. So, I'm super stoked to have been able to do it. To me, like the excitement of seeing those babies kind of came very close for me to like scrub python clutches. And I've had tiger rats almost as long as I've had scrub pythons. So they've been part of my life for a long time. And they were always a species that I wanted to breed. I can't really remember when I first kind of got my eye on tiger rats, but I got my first male. He's a pilatus. I still have him now in 2017. And I just, from the moment I got that snake in my hands, I'm like, dude, this is like the coolest colubrid I've ever experienced. A friend of mine who does venomous, he literally equated them to mambas as far as like their disposition goes and working with them. So, if you want to experience a snake like that without, the almost certain death aspect, and spilotes are more beautiful in my opinion, then, it's a great option. But yeah, I've had them for a while, and then, my group is mostly Mexicanos, so a few different localities of the Mexican tigers. And around at this point, a year and a half ago, I moved across country. So I'm in Texas now. I was in Indiana previously, and it threw a lot of stuff into a cycle, kind of for better or worse for me. Pythons, colubrids, whatever it may be. And last year the spilotes were no exception to that. So I had a bunch of big enough like 4x2x4 cages that I had bought for all my spilotes, but they weren't assembled. And anticipating my move, I didn't put them together just because that's a lot of volume of space to move.
Yeah.
Two of the biggest U-Hauls and a cargo van, is what it took me to move everything. So I'm like, I'm keeping these things flat as long as I can.
Yeah.
So like I just had them in kind of like larger tub setups that I hated, frankly, and they never did anything in those setups, and I wasn't expecting them to either. And then when I moved, I had to go even worse and have them in like those like big like ARS drawers for a while I was getting everything situated with the house and was able to actually make the time to build the cages. And I had a few females go through cycles in those tubs. That was like the first time that I had done any sort of like even pseudo cycling with them. And I got 3 slug outs last year. I guess I got my good clutch last year as well, but like April, May of 2024, I got a bunch of slugs. And it was disappointing. Obviously, no one likes getting slugs, but for me, it was at least a bit encouraging that I'd gotten something, because previously I'd just gotten absolutely nothing whatsoever.
With species that are hard to breed, I feel like even slugs are, at the very least, a semi-accomplishment.
Yeah, for sure.
So I give people praise for that as well. Like, especially, I know a couple people with like the Jansenite and stuff, Gonyosoma. Like I've said, like Justin deserves his props, even though he hasn't been able to hatch them. Just like getting eggs is definitely an achievement on those, and
Absolutely.
say on these tiger rats, that they're that hard or so uncommon.
Yeah, and after having done it, I'm not sure if they're as hard as they are. Maybe just take a bit more patience than other colubrids do. I guess I can get to that as I progress throughout the story of it. But anyway, so it was kind of like after all of them had slugged out and stuff that I was able to finally get around to getting the new cages built and get them set up nice with some live plants and a bunch of branches, and they have shelves in there that they can like a half shelf on one side that they can get up on and promote more Spilotes like behavior than what like I'm looking at one right now to my right that's just cruising every which way possible. Like that's what these snakes do. A small enclosure or a short enclosure really does these snakes no justice. And frankly, I think if you don't have the ability or the will to do that, you should probably just find yourself a different species. Keep like a Russian rat snake or something else that's like yellow and black but doesn't need a 4-foot tall cage. But I mean, with that said, though, they're my favorite colubrids, and I think everybody who is into colubrids would absolutely love tiger rats. So anyway, I get them in their cages, and my plan the whole time with these bigger display style cages was to have them permanently cohabbed for a few reasons. One, I just I don't want to say it's common knowledge, but I feel like enough people who have bred Spilotes have made the comments that they do well cohabbed year round, and for a few different reasons, I was very encouraged by that. For one, I love doing that when possible, like with a lot of my rattlesnakes and stuff like that. I have them pairs cohabbed. It's just fun to see natural behaviors, and then frankly, you can fit more snakes in a smaller space, which I need. If I can do that without compromising the well-being of the animals, I'm certainly going to take full advantage. And then
does feeding time get dicey with them? I'm not familiar with their feeding response.
So, yes. Long story short, yeah.
Okay.
I'm glad I don't have like 40 of them, because then feeding would be an all-day task. I have my 4 cages of adults where I have the pairs cohabbed, and when I'm feeding them, I'm just standing there the whole time. They're not cannibalistic, but they are excitable.
Yeah.
So I actually on Thursday, Brooke had to run over really quickly and help me pull my male Veracruz apart from my female. She had a chick that she was taking down, and then he started taking it down too, and then kind of started getting her a little bit. I had the same thing happen with my Yucatan pair, but he actually got like 3 inches of her down. So
oof.
But like what the funniest part about it is, like on Thursday I separated them. I put the male back in the cage, and I was just holding the female, and I gave him a chick, and then I just gave her a chick in my hand, and she eats it in like 10 seconds. When meanwhile, a minute ago, she was inside of his mouth. No care in the world. Luckily they don't have very big teeth, and they're not all like too destructive of one another when that has happened. I mean, I've only had that happen twice now, and no damage was done by any means.
Gotcha.
So, I think the ideal way to do it is either 2 sets of tongs, or just be very quick with your placement of the rodent, or the rodents or the birds or whatever you're feeding them, and then if you can catch them when they're not in the same place, you're golden.
Even better. Yeah.
So it's challenging, I guess, but it not to the point of where it makes it impossible to do. And then like at different times of the year, like I'm noticing recently, some of the males have a bit less of a feeding response than normal, Just they're a little bit more breeding focused. So it's kind of easier to, if I want to get this female 3 chicks and I want to give the male only 1, that, it's a lot easier than, let's say, probably over the summertime, when, that's not, they've maybe already gone through their cycles or whatnot. And,
Yeah.
Breeding is not in the discussion for them right now. I guess to hit that comment while it's kind of fresh. This might be blasphemy, but I think for me it's the tiger rats, but not by a lot.
Okay.
It's not a huge margin.
I know you like your sulfurous.
Yeah, I do love my sulfurous. That's for sure. And I'm trying to even think of why. They're very, very similar from a behavioral standpoint. And maybe my answer will change if my sulfurous get like 12 feet long. That then it might switch over to them. They're like the same size as my Pilatus and my Mexicanus right now, about like the 7 to 8 foot
Okay.
range. So, adult size, but very small, like nothing like Roy's giant male that he'll bring to like Pomona and stuff like that I put in my hands. I'm like, this snake looks like it's 3 times the size of mine, even though it's only maybe a couple feet longer.
Right.
Because they just fill out so significantly with time. But yeah, probably just the tiger rats, just kind of because they've been part of my life for a lot longer. And I love some of the coloration variants on them, like the Tamaulipas locality type, and the ones that I have as well. Just the varieties.
Yeah, the Veracruz are beautiful too. I got to see a couple of Veracruz animals at John's house from Palm Beach Colubrids, and they were super pretty. Getting to see them in person, especially, he had a nice I'd call it like a sub-adult, but like in a nice display cage, and man, that thing was so cool.
Yeah, they're badass. I was really pleasantly surprised with how orange the babies were. I really didn't know completely what to expect from the clutch, because when I got my animals, they were kind of like sub-adult to adult size already, so I didn't get to raise them from when they were really young. And they're pretty vibrant yellow and rich black, high contrast. The male has a little orange on him that actually he developed kind of with age. I was looking back at pictures, and when I first got him, there wasn't any orange on him. But now I feel like you can really only see it in person. It's muted, but it is there. But then the babies came out like tri-stripe, like yellow, orange, and white. And I'm like, what the heck is going on here? Like this is nuts.
They're super interesting, super cool looking.
Yeah. But then, so I guess to get back to what I was talking about before, I've now diverted us like 2 or 3 times.
No, it's all good.
So once I got into, those are the babies. Really a lot calmer than you'd expect too. I was fully anticipating these babies to be like, just sit there and bah, 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 bah. And I mean, even right out of the egg, just like that, like that's how they were acting. They were just kind of calmly crawling around and stuff like that. I mean, they'd react to like fast movements, kind of like all spilotes do.
Right.
Yeah, but even now, as they've been, eating and growing a little bit, they'll run at first, but like as soon as they're in your hand, they chill right out, and it kind of that's the same case with adults. So it was interesting to see, because I fully expected them to be little firecrackers.
Do they puff a lot at that size too?
Not really. I've only had them do it a couple of times. Yeah, not much. Yeah, I mean, honestly, with my Mexicanus, or even the Pilatus, I rarely get any sort of puffing out of them. The sulfurous for sure, they'll do it. Especially my female will like, sometimes she'll just be sitting there, just like staring out of her cage, just like neck fully expanded, just like staring across the room. I'm like, oh, this is so cool. But yeah, not really a whole lot from the Pilatus. For whatever reason, really at any point in time. So anyway, when I got them into those bigger cages, I did see a bit of courtship behavior with them, kind of in like, let's say like the early summertime. I talked to John, and he said that that he's heard of double clutching for sure. So I wasn't 100% sure what to expect. I just, I was glad to finally have them set up the way that I've wanted to the entire time. And then come like fall time, I'm kind of slowly or approaching the time when I'm going to start to cut down on their food a little bit, prepare them for like the first year of really doing an actual brumation-ish cycle with them. Kind of in a way that John described how he did it when he was successful with his Veracruz. And it was, I think, like mid-September. And then all of a sudden, my Veracruz are copulated, and the male is dragging the female around the cage. I'm like, huh?
Weird
What?
time of year.
Like,
Yeah.
why now? And I obviously that's when you get a copulation like that, that's really promising. I feel like with a lot of colubrid species, but considering the time of the year, I was like, okay, this could be something. But if it's nothing, I'm not going to be disappointed.
Right.
And then I think they did it again a couple weeks later, and a few weeks following that, the female goes off of food, goes into shed, and I'm like, oh, all right, I guess this is happening. And about 30 days after her shed, drops a perfect clutch, and I guess there was one slug, but it's,
Okay.
of the eggs that I got, everything was great. I'm like, wow, I really can't believe this happened. So just kind of wrote it out, set them up in the incubator, and 71 days later started hatching out. So yeah, it was a really wild experience. And to make matters even weirder, so basically as soon as she laid her clutch, that was right around the time when I was starting to get everyone shut down. So
Right.
I gave her a few more meals. I kept like the heat panel in the cage on when everyone else was totally off. And then she looked fine still. She didn't lose a whole lot of weight from laying her clutch. So I probably gave her like 3 or 4 small rats, and then about a week to clear out, and then I started putting them down. um, she cycled again during brumation, and gave me the tiniest little slugs I've ever seen in my entire life,
Oh,
like
really?
2 weeks ago, like literally like the size of follicles. I was shocked. um so I mean, I guess hopefully she can this year kind of correct her cycle a little bit to be on more of a normal
Yeah, I was
trajectory.
gonna ask, like, what were you gonna do? Like, I was almost wondering, like, do you let her just like ride out all of next year and then brumate her again, at the end of this year? But yeah, I guess you maybe
Yeah, I
got her
mean,
down in time.
I guess when you're looking at a cohab pair of snakes, you kind of are relying on them to do a lot of that work. Um, you know, if the male is going to be pursuing her and stuff like that, then it'll either happen or it won't. Um, I feel like I've done what I can to put them through that winter cycle, and now it's all going to be about just feeding them the right way, and then just kind of seeing how it goes
Nice.
from there. But yeah, considering that she just dropped that other clutch, I'm expecting, I mean, the earliest maybe like late summer or fall, like she did last year. But then again, who knows? I'm still kind of trying to learn how all
Maybe
this
that's her
works.
time of year, right?
Could very well be. And
Yeah.
especially in a setup like that where it's cohab, you are completely relying on what they're going to be doing, because if they want to breed, they're going to do it, and if they don't want to, they're not. And there's not really a whole lot you can do. But I will say, it doesn't seem like the pairs get complacent by living together like some other species do, which is really nice. I think a lot of like pythons and boas in particular, if they're cohabbed year round, they're just going to kind of end up being roommates instead of when the time comes actually getting the
Interesting.
job done. But these spilotes, I mean, they've been together now for maybe almost 10 months, and
Okay.
they're going through all the motions just as if I had just introduced them, in like late January. So
Cool.
yeah.
Yeah, out of all the groups, I feel like colubrids are the snakes that you can kind of just leave together and
Yeah.
do whatever with. Like, and I don't do it solely because of, I don't know, I try to stimulate the behaviors, but like the Texas rats, when I'm pairing them, I essentially have them cohabbed. Like,
Mhm. Yeah.
I separate to feed, and that's about
Yeah.
it. And then I throw them right
Yeah.
back together.
Yeah.
And that male's with that female till I see noticeable signs of her being gravid. So
Yeah. That's the same thing that I've always done, and I haven't bred a ton of colubrids, but I've bred enough to where I think I at least have a bit of a grasp on the process. And yeah, whether it was the beauty snakes, the Jani, the rubidus, it was just from whenever pairing started. Yeah, they have, I separate them, feed them, put them back together a day later, and then just do that until the female refuses food or isn't shed, and
yeah.
then then you're getting something at the other side of that, whether it be good eggs or slugs. So, which is
Yeah.
nice. It's nice when it's that easy to like keep it regimented like that. It definitely, you know, especially if you have a lot of them, a lot of colubrids, it makes it really easy. Like, all right, this is my pairing day. This is when I feed. This is when I'm going to separate them. Instead of some other species where you kind of like looking for different signs and when are they
Well,
developing better?
the turnaround time on colubrids is just so much faster than pythons. I mean, I have the
Totally.
ball pythons here, so I'm used to it too. I'm just like, this is so crazy that this is how much. And ball pythons are easy, like they're easy, but how much extra time goes into it and the amount of pairings and just how many
Yeah.
months it takes for her to build and get to that ovulation and stuff. So it's like a breath of fresh air when it's like colubrid copulation, 5 to 6 weeks later, you get eggs and then you incubate from there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
For me, like, I feel like I have different kind of tiers of that where like I have the rodents where it's like 1+1=2. And then like colubrids where it's like a little bit more, cut and dry. And then like the scrub pythons where it's, before you have, from the first copulation to babies can be 10 months. And then
yeah,
I have like the rattlesnakes where it's like, okay, cool, they locked. She'll have a litter in a year. So
damn.
yeah. I guess the good thing is though, with all the stuff to kind of keep me distracted, that year kind of blows by. I was like, oh shoot, I remember that she was gravid now. Oh, cool, babies. So like,
Nice.
but yeah,
Get a
no,
little
definitely,
surprise.
yeah, it makes the colubrids a lot nicer that it's a little bit more regimented like that.
Cool. And you said you have 4 pairs of tigers?
I have 4 pairs of tigers and I have the sulfuris.
Okay.
So I have a pair of the Tamaulipas Honduran mix that are crossed that Jason Hood did.
Yep.
My male's he's full grown. The female needs another year. So come like next January, I'll probably throw them together. And then I have my kind of like Guyana locale Pilatus, the Veracruz Mexicanus, Yucatan Mexicanus, and then the sulfuris, which are also from Jason.
Nice. Cool. Yeah. And besides just like the you said it's a 4x2x4 you use on them?
Yeah.
Okay. And what about some of your other general kind of husbandry guidelines for how you keep them, I'd say, through the most of the year when they're not broodmating?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, almost completely straightforward, just room temperature. Considering that my room temperatures are probably a bit warmer than most people. And then, if you're out in this part of the country, kind of like out west in the desert, during the summer, you might let your house get up to 82, 83 just to avoid having a $700 electric bill. So like during the summer months, or honestly from probably now until late October, they're definitely getting 80 to 82 during the day, and then probably down to like 76 or so at night. I'll provide a very mild basking spot, but really just to where like that spot might be 82, and then during the day when it gets hot, it probably cuts off just because the thermostat doesn't, is
Got
past
it.
that threshold. So yeah, really, really straightforward. Um, they have decent substrate in there, holds moisture. I spray them a couple times a week. Typically they have a like a box with sphagnum moss in it as well. So from that, and then also a live plant. So hydration, shedding, humidity in a setup like that is no problem. They get the job done. you know, and then like I'll have like UV or LED lights in their cages, just you know, for the sake of
for
the
lighting.
display. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they're in what would be my dining room, my adults, and it's so cool. It's like they act like lizards in the cages. You know, they're like they'll literally like they'll stare at you across the room, and I guess yeah, really the way to that I like to describe it is they're almost like a tree monitor without legs, in the way that
Okay.
they kind of interact with their environment outside of their enclosure, and it doesn't come from a place of like fear or you know they're worried about what you're doing. To me it's really curiosity, especially once they've like settled in the enclosure. When it, like really early on for the first couple weeks probably, you know they when they weren't used to somebody walking by, okay, then that's probably going to you know make them a little startled. But as soon as that became a routine part of their lives, then that reflex totally went away. And then yeah, like you know, if anyone's watching the video, they can see that one like
Oh yeah.
they're all chill once you get them out of their enclosure. They're just they have a pretty good feeding response, and then they're also fairly cage defensive, especially if you like you go for a grab the first time and they kind of get away from you and then they circle back around, then you're going to get the cage defensiveness. But literally as soon as they exit the threshold of that cage, and that's yeah, so that last picture was the copulation. But yeah, they're
Oh
super chill.
yeah.
Yeah. So, which is it is really cool to watch them mating in the enclosures. They're very performative with it. You know, going all around the cage, up in the tree, as you can see right there. You know, these two
Yeah.
are literally perched at like the highest point of their cage, copulating, and yeah, it's pretty cool to see.
Yeah. So I see in your cages you use a lot of like branches, and are those live plants in there? Are they fake plants?
They're live, yeah.
They're live. Nice.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I mean, it just seems like a very naturalistic type setup.
Yeah,
Which
yeah.
I
I
feel
mean,
like with
relatively.
these yeah, with these semi arboreal species or arboreal really, like I just feel like that's like the best way to go with them is just those
Yeah.
nice setups like that. And they really seem to take advantage of all of it.
Yeah, and the thing is with how light they are, they're not destructive. So they're not trampling plants and knocking stuff over. You know, they're really good. I mean, as long as you have the branches and whatnot, at least moderately secured or wedged into place or something like that. You know, if they're just kind of floating around and anything could knock it over, then that's one
Right.
thing. But yeah, that's what's really nice about it is, you know, they're a big snake, but they're very light. So the level of destruction is to a minimum, which makes it easy to have them in a naturalistic setup.
Nice. Um yeah. So yeah, I mean that's just super cool, man. And hopefully, you know, you have that continued success and you could
I hope so.
be on that list of guys that are producing them consistently because I mean they're just awesome.
Yeah.
And especially those babies, they're just super sick. I remember what was it, Daytona 2022? Was that when Jason made the Tamaulipas?
The
It was
pures,
22. Yeah, the pures.
the
It was
pures
either
were 23.
23.
Yeah.
When I saw those, I was like, dude, and that's when I did it. I didn't know him back then like that. Like I said, these are the best snakes at the show, like hands
Yeah.
down.
I
When I
wasn't
got
there
to
and
see
I
him.
can promise you that they were. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And there was some good stuff I saw at that show, but man, those were killer. But yours look very similar, like color wise.
Mhm.
So that's super super cool.
Yeah. No, I'm very excited with how they came out. Obviously, I don't expect them to fully maintain that color into adulthood, but I mean, maybe they will. I don't know. That you know, I'm keeping a pair, so I'll be
I
able
was
to
gonna
see
say, you
them.
releasing any? You holding on to them for a while, or
Yeah, yeah. I'm honestly, I'm at the point where I really can't afford to hold back clutches anymore. Um, just purely
yeah?
numbers wise, especially snakes like spilotes that get as big as they do. So I kept a pair, and then the rest of them are already all spoken for. So I'm very
Oh hell
very
yeah,
grateful. Yeah, I didn't even need to post them or anything. Just you know,
that's
very
awesome.
easy. Yeah, and that's I think what also it shows is that these snakes are they're in demand. within the colubrid community, which I think is a great thing. Over the last probably 5 or 6 years or so, I think some of the more obscure colubrids have become more popular. I mean, obviously, shows like yours are helping that cause, but I think there's definitely a need for really solid captive bred, obscure colubrids across the board. And like tiger rats historically, I think wild caughts, they do pretty well. But obviously, a captive bred is just a cut above, kind of, no matter how you look at it.
Of course.
And especially with like the amount of success with sulfuris there has been over the last few years with Roy and Jason and whoever else is working with them. Those guys have really pushed forward the popularity of these snakes. So for more Pilatus mexicanus to be produced as well, I think just going to continue the growth of popularity within the Spilotes genus.
Yeah. Speaking of you using all the taxonomic names, I had a good time listening to your podcast the other day. That was interesting. I did not know that backstory, so that was pretty cool to hear about how like the naming went with all of those, and then they were all the Sustes, and then because of the way it went, that's how Phrynonax got moved to their separate thing. But that was interesting.
I didn't know that about the type species for the genus kind of being the keystone there, where if that one moves, the genus gets destroyed. So there we go. We got Phrynonax now because sulfuris going into Spilotes killed the genus Sustes, because sulfuris was the type species for the genus. So, but I mean, I guess working with all of the above species, just from like a behavioral practicality standpoint, I think it's definitely an accurate reclassification.
I was about to ask, how do you find, I guess, behavior? I feel like on looks, like I don't see a gigantic similarity, and maybe that's because I've never seen a sulfuris in person, and I'm only going on pictures, but I feel like they don't look super similar to me, and maybe that's just me being stupid. I don't know. But like behaviorally, what do you see in terms of like similarities there?
I mean, behavior wise, almost the exact same snake in a lot of ways. The most major difference, aside from sulfuris obviously becoming a bit larger as full grown adults, is the head structure. They have that kind of more round, bulbousy bulldog head structure, kind of like a Papuan python compared to an olive python. As I'm looking at my olive pythons, coming up with that analogy, but I think it does work. Physiologically, very similar snakes, but just the head structure is just night and day different. And then sulfuris are a little more shiny in the scales, but same kind of keel, like from body structure wise, at the same size from the back of the head down, almost the exact same snake. Same kind of proportions, really long tail, etc. Some of the behaviors as far as like the defense with the puffing and whatnot go are a bit different. Like I've had the sulfuris like kind of like come at me almost like a cobra and like puff their neck up. I haven't had the Pilatus or Mexicanus do that. They'll more kind of like go sideways, puff vertically, and then like take like a swiping strike, where the sulfuris are more like come right straight to your face. So some behavioral differences like that. But I've worked with both Poecilonotus and now Sex carinatus, formerly Polylepis, and it just couldn't be more different than Spilotes. And especially couldn't be more different from sulfuris.
Cool. Yeah. I have the Poecilonotus, and I could tell how like different they are from Spilotes for
from
sure.
Anything else in the world,
or that too, yeah. But I just really enjoy the puffing behavior. I think it's so cool. It's so visually like just striking. Especially like that video I showed before. My two are so defensive. They puff up as soon as I lift the hide off of them, and they get a little bit of like light that shines in there, they get pissy. And but they're fun.
Yeah, no, they're so much fun. Yeah, I mean, just that, it's like playing the lottery to a degree with them. Not quite as bad as green tree pythons, where at least you're going to get something that you want out of it. But yeah, just that extreme color change. I feel like very few species have like a 2-stage color change like that.
Yeah.
Where they get worse and then they get better. I feel like a lot of times it's just a progression of getting better, or I guess in the case of green tree, some could say worse if if you're going if you're going green when you want to go melanistic.
Right.
but like in just how long it takes for that color change to happen. It's a species that requires some patience for sure. As are the spilotes, but at least with the spilotes, you know what you're going to get from the jump. I mean, for all intents and purposes, spilotes look as good as they ever will they're probably the day after their first shed.
Yeah.
They probably are going to maintain a majority of that throughout their life. But from at least what I've experienced and what I've seen in pictures, the way that the babies look, you really can't beat that. So very much the opposite of the Phryronax. So, but yeah, no, they're badass snakes. And what's nice about them, obviously, is if you're into these kind of neotropical rat snakes, these arboreal rat snakes, you don't necessarily have space for an 8, 10, 11 foot spilotes. Get yourself a Phryronax and only be working with a 4 or 5, maybe 6 foot snake.
Yeah.
So like, I mean, I saw
some of them do get a good size. They
do. Yeah.
They're
I've
deceptive
seen
for
like probably
sure.
7. I've probably seen like 7 footers or so. But I saw Roy's Sex Carinatus at Pomona, and like the thing looked like it could fit in the palm of his hand, all curled up.
Really? Oh, he brought
Yeah.
it. That's cool.
Yeah, he brought. I can't remember if it was the male or the female. It was a solid red animal. It was gorgeous. But yeah, I mean, and I could be wrong, but I would be shocked if that snake was 6 feet long. So
Okay.
like very, very slender, to where like a small rat would like leave a significant lump in that snake. So
Yeah.
but yeah.
Cool. Now to talk about some snakes, going the opposite, some snakes that get very pretty as they age, something you bred last year. We talked about them a bit on the first pod that we had, but you did have a clutch of Depei Jani,
Yes.
the Mexican pine snakes, which I know are one of your favorites in the collection, but
Yes.
yeah, just another super cool species, one that I got introduced to from from guests on this podcast. So, but yeah, you had a nice clutch here.
Thank you. Yeah, I was very excited about it. That was my second clutch from my female. The first one I think was only 6 babies, and then this one was 14. So a nice step up. But yeah, she's gorgeous. She's like, to me, she's my favorite Jani I've ever seen in pictures or in person. Even like bringing her out of brumation like a week ago, she just like that orange-ish yellow was like deep orange, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this snake is just insane. But yeah, I love him. I'm making a promise to myself that I'm actually gonna hold back a pair this year if I get babies. I've messed up royally, and I haven't held anything back. Actually, Patrick in the comments, he got what was going to be my holdback female, but then he swam
right
away from me. So at least I know where she is.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, this year I'm keeping the best 2 that I can from that clutch, because I've made that mistake with colubrids in the past, like with my blue beauty snakes, where I just ended up selling the clutch. I'm like, oh, I'm going to get him again next year. And then I do get him again that next year. And I'm like, I'll get him again next year. And then something goes wrong. And I'm like, oh, shoot, I have no holdbacks now. What have I done?
Yeah, man, I had a similar issue. I messed up big time. I produced a really nice, I think I talked about this publicly, and if I didn't, I guess now's the time. I've said it in private at least. I made a really nice scaleless Texas rat back in 23, and he unfortunately, it was a male scaleless double het leucistic anery, and he crashed on me just bad, and he went downhill fast and he's gone. So that said, and then I didn't I didn't have any other snakes from that clutch to hold back. And
Yeah.
then this past year, I had one male, and that was the first snake out of the clutch I sold. And I
Mm.
sold him before things went bad with that snake, and now I
Yeah.
totally regret it. So it sucks sometimes. Luckily, I was able to pick up what's kind of a replacement, and I wouldn't have wanted it to be a replacement, but it's gonna do the job this year. But yeah, it sucks sometimes, man. And we as
Yeah.
breeders definitely, it's something to be conscious of. And if anyone else can take the learning experience from me, it's hold back more than like a pair of snakes sometimes. Hold back
Yeah.
more than a pair, because your males could crash, things can go wrong, and when you need a backup and you don't have it, it sucks.
Yeah. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more with that. Yeah, it's not a good feeling when that happens, and especially with a species like a Texas rat or a Mexican pine snake. The idea of I'll produce more next year is a lot more feasible than with certain, like with the spilotes, for instance.
Yeah.
So like it's a lot easier to kind of get trapped into that mindset of, oh, I'll get one from the next clutch. Which most of the time does work, but then whenever it doesn't, now you're like, oh shoot, what have I done? So
And then even certain animals, I would say certain animals, especially if it's a very variable species, some animals you can't even replace, but you can
true.
have like a second best. And
Yeah.
arguably the snake I lost was in my opinion, a one of a kind, the way he was looking before he started
Yeah.
crashing on me. So
Yeah. It sucks.
um which sucks. But I have his sister still, which is still my holdback girl, and she's amazing. So hopefully their genetics and their kind of legacy there can carry on at the
Yeah,
very
for sure.
least.
Yep. I get that. Yeah, it's the ups and downs of this game that we all enjoy. It can
Oh
really
yeah.
fucking break your heart sometimes.
Yep. That's for sure. Um so you have another clutch of Mexican pines going for this year, or planned at
Yeah,
least?
yeah, I hope so. With the same pairing, I actually have them together as we speak right now. So
Nice.
I'm hoping. I'm hoping. I have no reason to think that it couldn't happen. She put weight back on perfectly. Everything went the way that you'd hope it would. So, I mean, thus far she seems receptive. This is just the first pairing,
Nice.
so I'm hopeful, because I definitely have people who are hitting me up wanting them, and I hope to be able to fulfill that. So
Yeah.
it's
Um
not a great
and I
feeling when someone's like,
remember
"Hey, do you have more of those Mexican pines?" I'm like, "Oh, no, like, if you could be patient for 6 months, hopefully I can get you."
yeah. Yeah. Um I know someone like early on in my episodes had mentioned there was a Pituophis, and I don't remember if it was Jedi or not. They had like a super short window after brumation to like you had to breed them almost right away. I don't remember if it was Jedi or not. Maybe it was a different
Can't imagine it
type.
is.
Okay.
I don't know. I can't say I've heard that before, but I bet it's something. So
Yeah, yeah. I'll have to remember who said it. I'm not 100% sure, but that's cool anyway. I know you have other bull snakes you mentioned, other Pituophis. You
yeah.
said the Kankakee bulls?
Mhm.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah, they're awesome, and they're really special to me. They're found about an hour and a half south of where I grew up in Chicago, in Kankakee, Illinois. I never got out to be able to actually go looking for them, but just the fact that like kind of a piece from close to home is pretty neat. And then they're so amazing. They're really underrated. Just a naturally occurring type of, even locality type of bull snake. Really dark, high
Right.
contrast. And for whatever reason, it seems like Kankakees haven't really been worked into the morph projects with the bull snakes all that much. And it's which is cool to like maintain that wild look, even though I think that it could be a very useful way to diversify bloodlines in bull snakes. But I would hate for that to mean that the naturally occurring form would get lost. So, as
Right.
of now, I don't really have a plan to use that for any morph pairings, just for the simple fact alone, I don't have anything to do that with. But I think that it could potentially be a thing to look into in the future. And then I don't know if I'd say Kankakee are the biggest of all of the pits, but I would say the one thing that you could speak to on that is they potentially could get bigger than a lot of captive bull snakes, because a lot of the captive bred lineages of bull snakes have been, I don't
kind of shrink down.
Yeah, like inbred to the point of shrinking a bit.
Yeah.
And that's another reason why I think they could be good for outcrossing, kind of bring some of that true bull snake size back to bull snakes. Because the morphs they're beautiful, they're incredible. I'm a big fan of the bull snake morphs. But part of what makes a bull snake that the thing could be 8 feet long and a truck. Like, so if you shrink a bull snake down to like 5 feet or whatever, that's that's a San Diego gopher snake. Now that's still like kind of takes the bull snake out of the bull snake. So
yeah.
But yeah, no, they're badass. I just got those in last summer, so hopefully this could be the first time producing those.
Very cool.
Hopeful.
Awesome. Let's see. In terms of Colubrid, is there anything else that's like new or anything we perhaps didn't talk about last time in regards to your collection or your Colubrid collection, at least in depth?
Yeah, I definitely expanded my Colubrid collection a good bit last year, mostly in the Pituophis area. The good, nice little influx of some pine snakes, northern pine snakes, San Diego gophers, and then some mangroves. Finally getting back into mangroves. So I have a pair of the Divergents from Patrick, and then I got a really cool aberrant Melanota from Dan Malari that at some point I'll get a mate for. But yeah, I really love Boega, and I missed not having them for the period of time that I didn't. So to have more now is definitely something that I'm excited about. Finally, getting back as part of the collection. They're just they're so incredible. They oh
yeah,
they're very poised. Their behaviors are very interesting. Especially my female Divergence, as if I don't know if Patrick's still here, but he can attest to it. She's a firecracker for sure. So you you got to treat her with respect. But I don't have Boega to be handling them a lot, so that's not something I necessarily need.
When Patrick was on a few weeks ago, him showing off those snakes, I mean, man, they're just so cool. He brought a few out for the camera, and I mean, Boega are super cool. They're always a species I've admired for sure.
Yeah. I mean, you're in a rough spot being in Florida with the Boega.
Yeah. Definitely can't get any of those right now.
Yeah. I mean, and I don't know if I lived in Florida, I don't know if I would go through 1,000 hours to keep Boega.
Because then you'd also have to go through 1,000 hours for everything else.
You can't just do one exclusively.
Oh no! It's 1,000 hours for vipers, 1,000 hours for elapids,
and then Heloderma,
Boega, and Heloderms. Yeah.
Yeah. Can those be simultaneous though? I
think. I'm not 1,000% sure. You could ask Paul McIntyre, because I know he has both Elapid, he has cobras and vipers. And I want to say he didn't do like 2,000 full hours. I want to say he did those simultaneously, but not 100% sure.
I think when I was looking into living in Florida, and this is like a decade ago, I want to say it was like either 300 or 500. Like the requirements were so much less.
They were a lot different. For sure.
And like it made sense to me. And then now, I mean, shoot, if I moved to Florida, I could take like 30 snake, or I mean, probably not 30, but like, I could take like less than like a third of my collection. It would, it would never happen.
Yeah, between the scrubs and the venomous.
Yeah. I'd be like, nope, not doing that. Not at all. So
yeah, I remember when I had Phil Wolf on because he used to be like an instructor per
Yeah.
se for like a venomous class, and he said the process was much different because I believe it was the hours, but it encompassed everything. So you used to get it all under like one umbrella, and then they changed
Mm.
it and separated it. So yeah, definitely got a lot more
Yeah.
complicated. Though I can say I slightly understand it to a degree because it's Florida, man. And
You guys are
there's
different
some
down there.
crazy mofos out here.
Yeah.
So
No, I mean, if any state needs to be, had their hand held, it might be Florida. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. The scariest part about it to me is just how they can move the goalposts. And like
yeah.
the not having grandfather clauses and stuff like that. Like at least like in South Carolina with like proposed legislation about venomous, there would be a grandfather clause. And like with the python ban in Florida and the no grandfather clause, it's like you have your entire life here, and now all of a sudden, like if you want to continue doing this, you got to uproot and move to a different state. Like that's insane. Like imagine if
Right.
you had a family or something like that. Like that would be
Yeah, it's crazy.
yeah. So imagine going through your 4,000 hours and then you get a collection, and then Florida bans all venomous keeping in the state, no grandfather clause.
Yeah, that would be interesting. Though what I can say from like the people I have had on regarding the venomous, I know the people who like got the original license where you didn't have to get them all separately, they were grandfathered in that
Oh, that's
they
good.
still get to keep all four types.
Okay.
Um,
Good. Yeah.
but yeah, I think in Paul's situation it was a little bit different, and he can only keep elapids and vipers. Like
Okay.
he did it later on than others did.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not too up on it. I just, I knew enough to know that Florida was completely out of the cards for me.
Yeah.
So yeah. And then especially once scrub pythons hit the docket, I'm like, oh yeah, nope,
Yep.
not doing that. I'll visit Florida. Florida will be a vacation spot for me.
Yeah. I'm gonna need to talk to you about your like how you logistically did your move, because I'm
Okay.
working on it soon, and I'm moving up to New York semi
Oh
soonish.
wow. All right. That's
So
that's
I'm gonna need to figure out how I should plan getting the snakes and all my shit up there
yeah.
in
It
a good strategic way.
man, it was an ordeal. I'll tell you. It took months, at least months of planning, and then from the time I was moved in until I felt like I was done moving in was honestly almost a year. So yeah,
Yeah.
it sucks
Now,
bad.
what I will say is that you have a lot more animals and equipment than I do,
Mm.
whereas I have a few rack systems. Like
Yeah,
all my animals are in racks, and I'm thinking what's gonna have to happen is I drive the animals in my car, like pack them all up that way,
yeah,
and then the racks go separately. However, they do that
yeah,
in movers or U-Haul, however it may go.
yeah, yeah. That's exactly what I did. You know, animals in an air conditioned van, and then two U-Hauls full of cages and racks and equipment and yada yada yada. So
Yeah.
yeah, I guess be grateful you're doing it when you don't have a ton of stuff and when you
It,
just have rack. I mean, we probably moved at least 2,000 pounds of glass. Like
damn.
that was the most stressful part of the entire move. Luckily, a buddy of mine packed it up really nicely. So like
Okay.
not one piece was damaged in the transit in the
Well, that's
1,300
good.
mile drive. But yeah, it was it was terrible. It was truly a terrible experience. That I know I'm gonna have to do again one day. So
Yeah.
that's the worst part about it, is I know I haven't done it for the last time. So
Yeah.
um,
Damn. All
yep.
right. Um, Another big thing since the last time I had you on, you have your own show on the Trap Talk Reptile Network, which I
Yes,
referenced
sir.
earlier, Cush's Corner, which anyone who watches this, you should definitely go watch Steven's show as well,
Most
or
appreciated.
just Trap Talk in general.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, you have a great show, man. I know a lot of
Thank
it
you.
is scrub python oriented, and then you throw these other fun little sprinkles in the mix. Like I referenced your episode from last week, and then there's the
Mhm.
occasional other ones. I know you have Kristen from Stygian Exotics coming on, who I had on
Yeah.
here as well. Yeah, so just talk about that, man. I mean, having your own show. I know back in the day, from MJ stories, it was you, him, and Forrest doing
Yeah.
the podcast
Unfiltered. Yeah.
together. So yeah, how does it feel to kind of be back in the saddle doing your own thing on the network?
Yeah. No, it's been great. Reptile podcasting and podcasts have been part of my life for a very long time. One of my earliest mentors in the reptile game was a man by the name of Josh Beatty from Chicago, who's a ball python breeder and was an OG podcaster. So he hosted Royally Addicted, which was on the Herp Nation radio network back
Okay.
in like the late 2000s, early to mid 2010s. Even like predating like NPR times, he was doing his podcast. So, that it was something that I had been around for a long time. He he interviewed me. I think I was like maybe 12. I'm not sure if it actually ever made it onto the podcast, but so yeah, I guess I can say I've been a reptile podcaster for over a decade.
Nice.
Just with like an 8-year gap in there. But yeah, and then I mean, like reptile podcasts were how I made it through high school. If it wasn't for Morelia Python Radio and like Justin and Jacob's show and Sean Bradley's show and stuff like that, I would have been I don't know if I would have made it through high school. So that was, and it was always something that I wanted to do as well. I've always enjoyed like public speaking and stuff like that, and talking to
Yeah.
people who I'm interested in, and hearing what they have to say. So to me, it was always a no-brainer that I would be involved with it at some point. It was just kind of a matter of how and when. And then when I was working at Cold Blooded Cafe for Forrest, him and MJ they had this idea for the Unfiltered Reptile podcast, and it was I and I think probably intentionally wasn't really told whether or not I was going to be a part of it. Maybe just kind of ice me out a little bit. And then, those early episodes, I think I was like our first or second episode. I was there, but I didn't have a microphone or headphones, so I had no idea what the hell was going on.
And we were like, that was when we were like 18, 19, or like 20.
I
Yeah.
just turned 19 when all that was
Okay.
going on. That was, I mean, those were great episodes. I mean, we had some incredible guests on, with MJ being on the West Coast, and then Forrest being on Forest time. They were like very energized and ready to go at 9 p.m. And I had just worked a 13-hour shift at 9 p.m. So it was definitely some runs at the gas station to get a large, the biggest coffee I can, and try to power through. But it was worth it. It was it was a lot of fun. And then the Unfiltered, that was probably like a year and a half total that we really ran for consistently. And in that period, we had some just and in my opinion, and I want to say this humbly, like some of the best reptile podcasts I think that have ever happened. Like probably the one I'm most proud of is the interview that we did with Ed Marino. I think it's the only time he's ever been on a podcast, and it was like almost 4 hours and included a full length tour of his snake room that like
Oh
no one's
shoot.
ever really even like seen a picture of it before. And now he's like pulling out like $30,000 basin after $30,000 basin, and like it was absolutely insane. And then kind of had to, life happens and got too busy, schedules didn't work out, and then kind of the Unfiltered thing kind of fizzled out for a while. and when I was looking at, my prospect of moving and kind of figuring out what life was going to look like after that, um, I was like, okay, am I going to get another job, figure out something else I can do? And at a certain point, I'm like, man, I really, I owe it to myself to like fully dive into the reptile thing, at least give it a shot. Because if it doesn't work, at least I know that I fully tried. Um, and at least in today's day and age, if you want to be a full-time reptile breeder, whatever you want to call it, and you're not like a legacy guy who's been doing it for decades, a name people know, like, like Vin Russo or Mike
Yeah.
Wilbanks or something like that, you need a heavy online presence. You need to be doing podcasts, you need to be posting on, Instagram and Facebook every day. You need a YouTube channel. Like that's how this is done these days. The most successful people are doing all that stuff. So to me, it was a no brainer to end up doing a podcast again. And so then when MJ approached me with the idea of doing my own podcast on the channel, I was like, this is perfect. There's already a built-in audience here who's at least to a degree familiar with me because I've been around the channel really since it started.
Yeah.
And then it's a format that I'm accustomed to, so it was an easier transition to make than I feel like it would have been, starting from total scratch on a new YouTube channel. And it's been great since. It's a lot, as it's a lot of work, and keeping up with
Oh yeah.
booking your guests and stuff like that. And I love when people like message me and they're like, oh, I hope this isn't like offensive, but like if you could have this person on, I love it. And I'm like, I have to book a show a week for like ever. I'll take as many recommendations as I can get.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Like, you have an idea for a guest? Perfect. Done. Booked.
Well, when I like right before this episode was the first time I've ever booked 4 episodes out, and I'm so serious about that. I'm almost always scrambling, or I have like 1 week ahead and like I'm good, but like this is the
I
first
hate
time
that feeling
I have a
so
month's
much.
worth of episodes planned and I'm like
Yeah.
awesome. And Brooke's the last one
Oh,
of
hell yeah.
this month. Yeah, yeah.
Perfect. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, man, it stresses me out so much. Like if I have like a cancellation or something like that, I'm like, oh man, this is like it ruins my whole day. But yeah, like
Is that where your impromptu scrub overview episodes come from?
and sometimes they're impromptu because of a cancellation, but then also I do like to just do those solo episodes occasionally. Um, and so like that one in particular I actually had planned for a couple of months to do that one. But like, yeah, like my buddy Alex Myers and I, if I have a cancellation, I'm like, hey Alex, you want to do a podcast tonight? He's like, yeah, sure, I can. And then like, we think of a topic to talk about. So, but I mean, that's kind of the name of the game. Sometimes things don't always go perfectly, and these people who we're talking to, I mean, most of the time it's somebody who has not only a big collection but a full-time job and a family. So,
Oh yeah.
to be able to fit in 2 to 3 hours on a Wednesday night or a Sunday night, that's it. We're very fortunate that these people give us their time, but then also,
Oh,
I feel like it's
100%.
on us to be very, very accommodating when life gets in the way of the podcast. So
Yeah, and I know you guys are super heavy on the live episodes, but honestly, it's
yeah,
why I've gotten more accommodating to doing pre-recordings. Like I don't
yeah,
mind. The
yeah,
weekends I am relatively free. So if I can
mm,
do something, even if it has to happen Saturday night, okay, we'll record Saturday. It'll come out on Sunday at my usual time. But
yeah,
yeah, it is what it is sometimes. And
mhm,
either way, it goes on here, it goes on Apple and Spotify and stuff.
yeah,
So people get to listen to it one way or another, whether it's
yeah.
live or not.
Yeah, and I've done some pre-records as well. And for Unfiltered for a while, we were doing fully pre-recorded. I do also really like the live chat aspect of it as well, especially with certain guests where it's more of like a topic-based episode as opposed to like an interview of a person.
Yeah.
Where it's gonna prompt a lot more audience interaction. I love doing that part of it as well. So for me, that's part of the reason why I like the live format. Um, I know it doesn't always translate super well to like Spotify or something like that. If, you have a picture up on the screen and you're referencing someone's
Right.
comment in the live chat, someone who's listening 2 weeks later, they're going to be like, okay, cool. But then I feel like that also could encourage someone to check out the episode live to see the full extent of everything that's going on as well. But yeah, I mean, nothing against pre-records. I think I may have to do one in the near future as well that would potentially be, well, I don't want to say too much in case it doesn't happen, but like one of the best guests I've ever been able to get for a show. So
I'd say I just had one as well, and I'll tell you who it is afterwards.
Okay.
You get the inside scoop, but I had a good one as well, and that's why I had to record on a Saturday morning, so an early Saturday morning. But yeah, no, I mean it's cool, man, and you do put on a good show, and you're a very good speaker. I knew that from the first time I had you on. You were the longest episode at that point, so I was like, yeah, this dude can go. So
yeah,
it fits for a podcast host for sure.
Yeah, back in the day on Unfiltered, MJ and I would like occasionally pick a day to like test to see if we could do like the longest podcast on the channel. I don't know if we ever broke 5 hours, but I think we came pretty damn close to breaking 5 hours one time. So
what would you guys do? Just like literally shoot the shit? Like,
yeah, I mean,
whatever.
If anyone can carry a conversation on for a long period of time, it's MJ. That was I'll credit him for all of that. I don't know if I'm capable of doing all of that. But yeah, I mean, MJ and I have been friends for a very long time, and we definitely have good chemistry on a podcast. So like we could literally come to a podcast with no plan and easily rip out like 4 hours like it's nothing.
Oh yeah,
and I feel like it'd actually be pretty good too, not just 4 hours of total shit. Probably some total shit in the mix there. I'm not gonna say there isn't, but yeah, no. So like doing stuff like that, it's always fun, and that's the thing about these podcasts. Like they're fun. That's what they're supposed to be. Obviously, and informative as well. But like when I'm cleaning snakes, I'll throw on a podcast, and it makes the entire experience that much more enjoyable. So, and I've gotten so much positivity out of podcasts of all sorts in my life. So like if I'm in a position to do something similar to that, I feel like it's kind of my responsibility to put out something that's, entertaining and educational and that people want to listen to.
Yeah, 100%. Now, when it comes to a little bit of the rest of your collection, obviously you had a lot of scrub success this past year. I've seen you post hatchling after hatchling after hatchling. I know you bred a lot of different types, and forgive me because I'm not all up to even though I listen to your episodes, I'm not all up to do with all the different scrub types. But yeah, man, what has you the most excited right now when it comes to the scrub pythons, besides just you having and breeding all the ones you have? Because I mean, I know they're not the easiest to like just maintain just because of size and all that.
And that's a good question. I would say just in general this year for me, it's the having the opportunity to expand the number of different species and localities that I've produced, and hopefully get some new ones under my belt. And a lot of these newer ones for me will be localities and species that very few people in the country have or are breeding at any amount. So like just the chance to add to that captive gene pool is very important. And then also, if I can have decent success, be able to justify putting animals in other collections as well to kind of spread that project out a bit. And then, I mean, honestly, I think for me, it's really just like the overall popularity of the complex and how it's growing in the hobby. Something that I'm very excited about, and seeing a bunch of people get into scrub pythons, even if they're not keeping them, just having an interest in them, and just becoming more knowledgeable on the topic. I started a Facebook group for the whole Somalia genus, but rarely do we get a good Boland's post in there. A little over a year ago, and it's just about a week ago past 500 members. So like it's for a Facebook group that's still pretty small, but But I'd like to say for the amount of people, it gets a lot of engagement where a lot of the members are really involved in the community, and everyone's super helpful. A big issue historically with the scrub python community is that some of the more, some of the old heads didn't like giving any sort of information out to new people, and if anything, took some amount of pride in trying to weed people out by being mean to them, and that's not what I like to do. So very much a different approach. I just happen to have been more engaged with it and have had more fascinated with those snakes when I was younger, to the point where any of that negativity wasn't going to stop me from doing it. But I could totally see how somebody who's just trying to learn about a new genus of snakes, stumbles upon a community that's, super toxic and whatnot, and immediately are like, oh, screw this, I'm going to go find something else. Like, you could turn somebody away instantly with with a good dose of negativity. But I guess to kind of get back to it, another thing, I mean, what my, like the couple you just showed, the bar neck scrub pythons, they're my main focus of my scrub python collection for sure. I have the most of them. I've produced the most of them, and I've kept the most of them too. And every year, I'd like to think that I can continue to do better and better things with them. The thing that I'm most excited about for this year is the fact that I'm finally able to potentially produce F2s for the first time.
Okay.
So this is my 5th year potentially breeding barnecks, and my first time that I have the ability to produce F2s. So if I could get even one F2 baby, that would be just, that would be just
pulling up barnecks by accident.
Well, there's a reason why, because I have a lot of them up there.
Yeah.
That's one of the Wamena Jaipura northern type, whatever you want to call them, babies from last year. That was a first for me, producing those. So, which they're a very underrated locality type. They've been bred by a handful of people, but it's kind of one of those things where there's like a clutch every few years. Ryan Young had produced them. Nick Mutton had been producing them as well. And that was really kind of about it. So I think I had the first clutch in like 2 or 3 years I think Ryan was the last one to do it prior to me. So, to be able to kind of keep those snakes in the, in the zeitgeist, so to speak, keep them, people's eyes on them. So they don't forget them. Because honestly, I feel like sometimes with some of the rare species, pythons in particular, if no one's posting them for a while, it's easy to forget about them entirely. So, like one for instance that I feel like that has happened to over the last couple of years are Timor pythons, where for a while Timor pythons were getting really popular. A lot of people wanted to get their hands on Timors. They had, started to get produced a few times. Like Gourmet Rodent had been breeding them for a while with some consistency. Ryan Young again produced them. And then I feel like over the last couple of years, you don't hear much about Timor pythons. And, that's a real shame, because that's an awesome python species. And I think another thing that hurt that were the retic hybrids that were made with Timor pythons that ended up getting some more notoriety than the actual Timor pythons themselves, sold for a really high price tag. I think just, I guess if your goal of the project was to make these hybrids, you did the right thing. But if your goal of the project was, or if you're in the mindset of I want to promote Timor pythons, that it was handled as poorly as it could possibly be. But I think the mentality was not, let's promote Timor pythons. It's let's make these hybrids and sell them for a lot of money. So
yeah,
and it had its consequences. And now there's like 37.5% Timor retic morph crosses and stuff. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like your morphs aren't enough. You need to do this now. Like, what?
Yeah.
So yeah, and they don't look. You can't. If you didn't tell a layman that there was Timor python in there, you would have no idea.
You wouldn't know. Yeah,
no, you wouldn't know. You'd think that might be some new retic morph. So
okay,
yeah, the 50/50s look very distinctive, but once you get albino and 75% retic, you're going to lose that Timor altogether in there, especially because of how closely related those snakes are. Like you're going to lose that. You're going to lose that right away. So
yeah.
Not sure why I went off on that tangent, but apparently I did.
No, it's all good. But going back to the scrubs, when it comes to them, like, are you like, what are your goals? Like, just besides like breeding them and keeping this going, like, are you shooting for different phenotypes? I know there are a couple mutations in some of the species. Like, what are, I'd say, like, within each type that you have, what are like little goals that you have that you're trying to like hit year over year?
Great question. So I guess I'll kind of start and go down the line. To go up top with barnecks, there are so many different looks within barneck scrub pythons that I eventually came to the conclusion that I just can't do all of it. So I'm like, I need to pick like a few that are my favorite and then really focus in on making those happen. And then hopefully somebody else can come in and hit some of these other categories that I'm going to, not be shooting specifically for. So the three main looks that I'm shooting for are, if you want to pull back up my Instagram, if you still have that shared on there, we could give some examples for anyone who's watching.
You're going to have to point me in the right direction.
Yeah, for sure. So if you scroll up a bit, scroll up. Okay, right next to the Spilotes on the right. Yes, click on that one. Okay. So this is one appearance. This is the reduced pattern stuff. My goal is to produce really nice reduced pattern barnecks that kind of have that like light tan, olive green appearance to them in the coloration. My eventual goal with the project is that I want to produce a barneck that has, those two neck bars and then no pattern at all for the rest of the body.
Okay.
With that base coloration. And then anything else that kind of comes along the way with the, reduced patterns, aberrant patterns, I'm here for it all. That particular female is one I produced in 2022. And to this point might be the best one that I have produced of that reduced pattern appearance. So then on the other end of the spectrum, if you want to close out of that, scroll up a bit. I mean, you can even go to like one of the most recent ones that I posted. So next to the Spilotes on the left, I would click that one right there. So like that, like really heavily patterned, high contrast barneck as well.
These are super cool. I like these.
Yeah, and it seems to be that's the consensus amongst most people, and for very good reason. Let's see, if you click out of that one, I'll kind of scroll up. Even the one next to that.
The one I had on before? Like the one posted it recently, like this one?
I would keep scrolling down it because I want to get one with a little bit more age, so I can kind of describe the last part of that. If you scroll down a little bit next to a Spilotes post, on the left next to those Mexicanas. We were looking at that one earlier. So this is a 2.5-year-old. So my goal with the heavily patterned barnecks is to have like a really nice golden base color. So with the reduced pattern ones where I want more of that like olive tan, with the heavy pattern I want as gold can get. I'm not going to make you scroll like crazy, but the baby that we were looking at previously, the mom of that clutch is like one of the most golden barnecks I've ever seen. So I anticipate them to continue to change and become really gold over time. To me, so far with my breeding experience with barnecks, it seems like color is really at a premium and not necessarily pattern. Pattern will happen. Color doesn't really happen. You need to breed for color. You can pop a heavy patterned animal out of really any pairing at all. Obviously, the more heavily patterned the parents, the better chance of heavy patterned babies. But for instance, there's this snake has a female sibling that's almost entirely patternless. So, it's kind of a crapshoot.
Interesting.
But the color, though, is what I think needs a little bit more attention from a line breeding standpoint. Obviously, if you can get both in a snake, then you're perfect. But when I make a pairing, I'm more looking at a color compatibility than a pattern compatibility. And then the third thing that I'm going for with them, and I don't know if you're gonna be able to find one. I'll look on my page myself. But it's kind of like, I mean, essentially to just describe it, it's like as melanistic as possible.
Okay.
I have this one might just be a lost cause for the time being, but I have a female that's almost solid black, and she has
All right.
produced some really weird offspring in the best way possible, where they're not really dark, but like one is like the closest thing I can describe it to is like a true ghost ball python, as far as its color goes. So this kind of like weird, like axanthic-y, hyper melanistic thing, whatever I have going on, that all stems from this one female. That's like my third project within Barnex.
Nice.
I think there's more than likely something genetic going on with that snake, just with how extreme the some of the offspring are. Just I think that the chances of it not being genetic are probably pretty low. But that'll be a long-term project to figure out. So yeah, those are the three within the Barnex. To keep on the northern end of the spectrum. So the other two northern types of scrub pythons are the Beox scrub pythons, and then the Wamina jayapura. With the Beox, it's just breed them at all. They've been bred one time ever in the entire world. There's probably less than 10 in the entire country. They are probably the rarest scrub python, maybe the second rarest to the Key Island. So just to be able to breed them at all would be like the peak accomplishment of my herpetological.
And you have a pair, I assume.
I have a reverse trio, so
okay,
that's it. Like, so I'm banking on these animals doing something. For the Wamina types, I don't have very many of them, but I guess my goal would be really high contrast, intricate pattern with like a really nice orange base color. But that's not one of my. I don't have that many of them. I have an adult pair, and then I have a holdback pair from my clutch. So like, I don't want to say it's a lower priority project. It's just one that I don't have as many individuals of. So there's not a ton I can do. The southern type scrub pythons are definitely a big old can of worms, just because I'm still not even totally convinced that like locality type and phenotype are super linked.
okay.
They're in like 3 layers of phenotypes throughout the southern half of Papua New Guinea, and then even down into Cape York. So, but there's like the orange highland type animals that are, really intricately patterned with silver and orange lateral bars. I love those types. I want to, produce as many of those as I can. I have like a southern scrub python that almost is like an anery looking individual.
Okay.
So if I could get like something like that going, where I have these like kind of anery looking southerns, maybe work that into like the patternless gene that exists in the southern animals, just something like that. Again, those aren't one of my higher priority localities aside from the orange highland animals, and primarily because a lot of people produce them, which is great. I think that I'm very glad that is that is happening. So then for me, I feel like less pressure to put a lot of time and resources into those snakes because people have that covered. Then if you go south of Papua New Guinea to the islands, you got the Aru and then the Key Island scrubs. And similar to the Beox, it's just do it. The Arus have never been produced in the US. There's conjecture whether or not they've been bred in Europe. They've been bred in Indo for sure, at least once. But like, again, just doing it at all would be the goal. With the Key Island animals, get a female is the goal. So I have the only one in the country, and it's a male. So
okay.
just doing his thing. And then to get to the other species, in the rest of the islands up kind of, you go west and north a bit, then you got the Tannenbar scrubs. With those, it's again just produce them at all. But then for anyone who's listening who's not familiar, there's two color phases and two pattern phases within Tannenbar scrub pythons. There's the axanthic and the xanthic, or like a yellow to orange spectrum, and then patterned and patternless. So the axanthic gene and the patternless gene are both recessive. Most of the individuals in the wild are the visual double recessive axanthic patternless.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which is the a crazy example of recessive genetics working out in the wild. I think the closest thing I can compare it to is like blue eyes in humans, how it's a recessive gene, but like entire countries have almost like 100% blue eyes.
Right, right.
Sweden, Norway, Estonia, et cetera, et cetera. And then so I guess other than just produce those at all, my favorite phenotype and everyone's favorite phenotype are the patterned xanthics. So the yellow, gold, orange kind of with the pattern. I have a male that is that phenotype that has like a purple tail. He's incredible. So produce as many of those as I can, which I guess is not the most difficult, because I have a male that is the double heterozygous, I guess. So like if I breed him to anything, I'll recreate him. Obviously, cool. All the babies inevitably will be het patternless and het axanthic. But as many of the yellow patterned animals as I can produce, I will try my best to. Obviously, not avoiding the other phenotypes, but it is the rarest phenotype, which is hilarious considering that it, the common one is the double.
The dominant form. Yeah.
Yeah. That'd be like if everyone's like, God, I need a double het clown pied so bad. I want a double het clown pied.
Yeah.
And then the last two would be the Moluccan scrub pythons. So like some of the rest of these, just do it at all. I do have an axanthic Moluccan, and I like them. I think they're really cool. I like the normal phase better personally. The gold and purple to me is hard to beat with silver and bluish purple. But
I think the axanthic Moluccan looks so badass. I think
I'm not
talking
down on them, but I'm just,
yeah.
I think you're comparing it to the nicest looking python in the world of a normal Moluccan scrub python. That's why I want to have both. I want to produce both as well. Some of the wild caught axanthics have been, I guess, not the prettiest into adulthood. But captive bred ones that I've seen raise up to adulthood, they maintain some of that blue coloration. And they're absolutely stunning. Like the female that I have now, on the right day, she still has like a purplish hue to her. So yeah, I love the axanthics as well.
Yeah.
And then kind of it'll remain to be seen exactly how some of the patterns can be worked with. Because you can kind of have you have patternless, kind of like diamond python dotted pattern. Some banded individuals, like MJ's male is a really nice yellow kind of banded Moluccan. And then they have some dorsal striped ones as well. So over the years, it'll be interesting to see how those patterns kind of manifest in offspring, if you can line breed for certain things. I mean, like a second or third generation line bred striped Moluccan scrub python would probably be just absolutely mind blowing beyond what we could even picture it to be right now. So, but for me, it's just the first step is just doing it at all.
Nice.
And then the last one, which is one that I have a lot of plans for, are the Halmahera scrub pythons. I foresee in 10 years them being the most popular of the scrub pythons for a few reasons. The primary reason being everywhere where Barnecks and southern types, the Highland types, wherever those are illegal, Halmaheras are legal. So you can keep them there in Florida.
Okay.
They are smaller than the majority of scrub pythons. Very old individuals can get 10 feet long, but reproductive size seems to be 7 to 8 feet, where for some of the others it's more like 9.
Gotcha.
And I think more of them stay at that 7 to 8 foot size into adulthood, which is a lot more manageable than 10 feet. I mean, an 8 foot scrub python, 10 foot scrub python, that 10 foot scrub python's twice the snake that the 8 foot one is. So I think it's much more manageable for most keepers, especially if you're in a smaller space and you have like, I can have a 4x2x2. I think you can keep a small adult Halmahera python in a 4x2x2 for, probably majority of its life. Bigger the better, obviously, but they're not the big snakes. And then a lot of them have pretty good temperaments, and especially with the captive bred ones that I've been able to interact with, I agree that they also have they have good attitudes. This freaking fly is crawling on my camera. They were overlooked for a long time, primarily because they were all like kind of dirty imports coming in with like, thick jungle skin, didn't really show their colors very well. They're kind of like a brown on brown on brown snake. And then up until 2019, or I think it was maybe 2018, they've never been bred in captivity. So there was this kind of like lore around Halmahera pythons. And then after they'd been a few times, it kind of died down a little bit. But then as scrub pythons have become more popular, so have the Halmaheras, because of that smaller stature, how they're a bit more manageable for some people. But then imports can be a bit difficult to establish at times. It's definitely doable, but I've lost some that I've tried to establish for sure, where like with a Barneck or a Maruki or something that's wild caught, you have a really, really high, chance of that animal establishing.
Gotcha.
I think a lot of people. What's that?
I think you lagged for like a second.
Oh, okay.
My bad.
Where did I?
I missed that last like sentence.
About like the imports and stuff like that. Maybe.
Okay. Yeah.
Just, I guess, and maybe I'll repeat myself a little bit, but just the imports being a little bit more difficult to establish, I think, kind of like scared some people away from them a bit. And another thing that the captive breeding has done has really shown the kind of color palette that these snakes can actually, can really have, where you'll have like neon yellow coloration, orange color. They, like silvers. They really have some pretty beautiful potential for their color palette. And like I have one that on certain days it's almost like a solid gold and yellow. So I think as awesome. Some of those start to become produced more and just people see them more, anyone who maybe has overlooked the Halmahera before might consider them again now that some of their true potential has been tapped into with captive breeding. And then I think that, the markets like Florida that now will be able to, have access to these scrub pythons. I think that's going to be a huge thing going forward. So, for me, it's the like that high yellow orange coloration or like silver axanthic-y looking, some like stripe, different cool pattern influences. Those are all things that I want to work on line breeding with those Halmaheras going forward. They're of the different localities and species of scrub python, I may have the most Halmaheras second to Barnecks at this point. And it's probably going to stay that way. So that's definitely be one of the main focuses of my scrub collection are the Halmaheras.
Nice. Now, when it comes to your scrub collection and what you have you had any difficulty breeding any of the species, or is it just a matter of having the numbers and individuals up to size?
I think that's why I've bred as many as I have, as I have a lot of them. You throw enough shit at the wall, something's bound to stick. So I still don't feel like I have it figured out yet.
Okay.
I mean, I've produced at this point, I've hatched out 100 babies. And I still don't feel like
I mean, in the fact that like all the species and localities and stuff that you've paired, you've been able to produce.
Yeah, I mean, like as far as like difficulty, like from one to the next, or
no, I just mean like in terms of all the ones you have, because you've mentioned like how like they just haven't, certain ones haven't been captive bred a lot. So I'm just curious, of all the ones you've attempted to breed, have they bred?
No, definitely not. I think some of it has to do with the fact that I have wild caught animals that I'm just, essentially just waiting for them to finally be ready to do their thing.
Yeah.
As I'm now starting to get to the point where I'm able to breed captive bred animals or like wild caughts that I've raised from babies, they seem to be a lot more with the program than some of the bigger wild caught stuff that I
Cool.
have. Yeah, I think it'll be just like any other python. Every subsequent generation of captive breeding will just make it that much easier to actually do. With some of these locality types and species that have been bred very infrequently, I think it's definitely a matter of not trying as opposed to them being just that difficult and just minimal animals being out there. One of the issues with scrub pythons historically is that they take a little bit longer to mature than a lot of other snakes do. So where like a lot of people they get into, especially if your like introduction to reptiles was ball pythons or corn snakes or something like that, you're expecting 18 months for a male, maybe 3 years for a female for sexual maturity, and now you're getting into a scrub
Sometimes less.
python. Yeah, right, exactly. And you're getting into a scrub python where that female might not even have her first cycle until she's 6 years old. And
Okay.
that male might be too intimidated by a larger female to breed until he's 5. Might he breed when he's 3? Maybe, but then that just comes down to that individual snake. So what's happened historically is like someone will get a big collection of scrub pythons, or like they'll amass 30 animals and they'll raise them up for a while, and then they're like, oh, nothing's happening yet, I'm going to sell my whole collection to somebody, and somebody else takes all these animals, or they piece them off to 3 different people, and some of them die, and the next person sells stuff, and they pass hands to the point of like just kind of dying off as a project.
Right.
And that's happened with a lot of captive bred stuff too. I mean, scrub pythons have been bred for a few decades now, but I mean, there are probably less than 10, maybe less than 20 scrub pythons in the US that can be traced back to animals that are like from the 90s or the 2000s,
Oh,
which
wow.
is crazy to me considering that they were produced back then. But there's no trace of them left.
Yeah.
So, part of my goal is to make sure that we're not saying that in 20 years.
Oh, yeah.
We're like, especially because I'm lucky enough where I do have a few of those animals that I can trace back to like the earlier 2000s. Where I have a baby barneck that I can show somebody, be like, this was the great grandsire produced by the Barkers in 2002 or whatever it was. And kind of like what green tree pythons have, the green tree community has done for so many decades of meticulous note keeping and lineage documentation and stuff like that. I do really think that scrub pythons are very similar to green tree pythons in the way that they're like their phenotypes pass along. I think that and I know people are on the same kind of wavelength as me of keeping track of lineages and pairings and stuff like that.
I think there's a lot of species out there that have good
absolutely.
phenotypes that can be worked with, but there's such this big, like morph craze with everything that a lot of people think that's all it's got to be. Like it's got to have the mutations. As opposed to seeking out these phenotypes with these animals. So I could absolutely appreciate what you're saying, but I think like even more so than just the green trees and scrubs, I think there's way more species out there that it can be done with. We just don't recognize them for that,
Right. Yeah. Honestly, it just takes like somebody to really double down on that project and make it a priority to pursue. And I'd like to think that I've done that with the scrub pythons, and
Yeah.
it's not just me. There's plenty of other good people who are working with these snakes as well, but I've definitely dedicated a lot of time and resources to doing this with them. And I'm glad it's starting to work out too. It's, been a long time coming with it. But yeah, I mean, I think what we'll be looking at in 20 years with these snakes compared to where it is now, I mean, it'll be unrecognizable, the amount of like line breeding and multi-generational animals that we'll see eventually. I think it's going to really be special.
Yeah. Yeah. And man, I give you credit for it, for going so hard with the scrubs. Cause like you said, like, they died off for years, kind of, to an extent. And you're really trying to bring back that resurgence of the species. So I could give appreciation to that. Cause I like to feel like I'm trying to do that with like Texas rats as well.
Yeah,
And that's like
sure.
my equivalence to the hobby is like I promote so much on those. I go so hard on
Mhm.
those. And there's people out there with cool stuff. It's just like they may not put their stuff out there as much. And it's good when there are good
Yeah.
advocates in the hobby for species that, without these good advocates, they could get forgotten about. And
Yeah.
obviously, for you and me who love our respective species, we don't want that to happen. So,
Yeah. And I think from not only the standpoint of, preserving those animals in the hobby, but then a business standpoint, as both of us are running snake businesses. Um, I've been kind of a finger on the pulse of trends in reptiles for over 15 years now, and
yeah.
everybody who has done the best has been the one who starts the trend, doesn't jump onto the trend. And you can see that with I mean, ball pythons is a perfect example. Not only like people who were the founders within ball pythons themselves, but like take someone like Justin Kabelka, who came in probably 20 good years into the ball python industry and was the first person to really think that these recessive genes might be what actually unlocks the longevity within ball pythons, and was working on double het lavender pieds or whatever it was in like the early 2000s, when those double recessive genes and now triples 25 years later are what everyone is shooting for. Well, who do you
Oh,
think is
yeah.
benefiting the most off of all of this? It's the guy who thought of it 25 years ago and now has, garages full of Porsches and stuff like that. So like,
Yep.
not that that's obvious, that's not the goal of all of this stuff, but I think there's nothing wrong with coming about that honorably along the way if you can do right by the animals and your customers. And then, but even so, like to be the person in front of a trend instead of following it, it's a lot, I'd have to imagine it's a lot easier to stand out and to make a name for yourself if you're at the forefront of leading that charge. And that was something that when I was first getting into scrub pythons, I was like, okay, these are my favorite snakes I've ever kept by a lot. Like it's not even a comparison. And there's a lot of potential here considering the amount of different species, localities, and then some naturally occurring morphs that are involved as well. And then they fit a really interesting niche of a large python that's not so large like a berm or a mainland retic or a rock python, but is bigger than a carpet python or bigger than like the really small super dwarf retics. And then the other thing that has not become an aspect of it yet, but always could, is that there has never been any national level legislation about scrub pythons, where there is about retics, to where what a lot of people forget sometimes, the overturning of the Lacey Act ruling didn't take the snakes off of the Lacey Act. It changed how the entire act was I guess put into action. Legally speaking, the interpretation of the bill was changed, not the bill itself. So if that precedent ever changed, we could be looking at an interstate commerce ban of reticulated pythons all over again, and we'd be back where we were. We'd be back, where we were in 2012 and 2013. So then, what could take the place of that kind of demand? Scrub pythons. They're good to go.
Right.
Kind of a bit of an insurance plan for the national level hobby in my eyes a bit. And even if it's not going quite that far, just an alternative. Because
Yeah.
as both of us know, and a lot of people know who keep diverse collections, having a diverse collection is really, really fun.
Oh, yeah.
The main part of I mean, that's why you started this podcast, was to let people know about the virtues of keeping a colubrid collection. And that's part of what I want to do too. Like I'm not selling anyone the dream of being a scrub python breeder. My main pitch is like, hey, if you have a room full of green tree pythons, you have a room full of retics, or even if you just want a few pet snakes, like these fit perfectly into any sort of situation like that, where they're keeping as basically the same parameter wise as all these other pythons and boas you like. And they also do really well in display cages. So if you want to have one display cage in your house or your apartment and you want this to be really spectacular, this could be the right species for you. If you travel a lot for work or something like that, you don't want a high maintenance snake, right up your alley. Like, a Spilotes, on the other hand, if you're somebody who doesn't spend a lot of time at home, the animal needs to eat a lot. It needs to be cleaned a decent amount, not crazy, but like a scrub python, like a big adult scrub python, you could feed that thing every 8 weeks. If you feed it a big enough meal for its entire life,
Right.
it's going to be perfect. So I think there's a lot of aspects of them that are, pretty appealing, just generally speaking, to a reptile keeper, appealing to me. And then, I mean, the aspect that got me was the interaction with them. They're very intelligent, very like, they have some of like the visual acuity of a colubrid, but with kind of the slow, deliberate movements of a python. And then the arboreal body structure, musculature is just, to me, I really like interacting with snakes like that hold on to you, that are climbing up, that are just exploring their environment. To me, it's just a fun type of snake to interact with. So that's what really drew me in. Ultimately, it was just the physical interactions with the snakes themselves, and then everything that I just listed on top of it made them even that more appealing to me. So at the end of the day, it kind of made sense for me to dive in as hard as I did with them, and definitely no regrets. I mean, I have snakes right behind me that I produced that are now essentially almost breeder size. So that's a pretty
awesome.
Pretty rewarding experience to be able to see go through to the kind of the state that you wish it to be at the beginning.
Yeah. And dude, the scrubs are super cool. I'll be honest, you got me like a little hooked on them. When you post certain snakes, like those really nice bar necks, like I'm like, man, those are cool. But if it's because of the size that I'll probably never keep them, but I could definitely appreciate them from afar for sure. They're awesome.
And then that also brings in the whole the virtue of the Halmaheras and the Tannenbars.
Yeah.
I mean, like my biggest adult Tannenbar female, she's like maybe 7 feet long and eats medium rats. And I'm like, you should not get any bigger for the entirety of your life. Like it's a big Tannenbar. Like my adult breeder size males are like 5 feet. So, and I'm not even going to say what I was about to say because I don't want to put an idea into someone's head. But like that's that to me is it fits the niche of somebody who wants a scrub python, can't accommodate a 10-foot snake. There you go. Here's a solution to the conundrum at hand. So but I mean, and I'm not out here to try to convince everyone that they need a scrub python, but I think that at least in my experience, the thing that really like drives me with it, especially when it comes to selling the snakes, putting them in other collections, most people who I sell a scrub python to will come back to me in a few weeks or a couple of months and say like, this snake is my favorite snake in my collection, or one of my favorite snakes, just like interacting with this animal. And that to me makes all of the difference, because the mindset isn't like, man, I'm thanks, Alex. Oh shoot. But like, someone's not like, oh, I love this scrub python. I'm this, when this thing has a clutch, I'm going to make 20 grand off the clutch in a few years.
Right.
Or, oh, I got in at the ground floor of this project before they get really expensive. I'm investing well. It's like I'm just loving keeping snakes right now, and this snake is putting me back in that position. That's what really does it for me. If you want to make money off of scrub pythons, be my guest. I'm trying to do the same thing. But like that, if it wasn't for all of these other aspects of it, I would have had such an easier time breeding, whatever else it would be. I mean, like if it was, the early 2010s, like getting into like Leachianus geckos or something like that, or, Chihuahua, something that was going to blow up. Maybe I wasn't quite as passionate about it, but I saw the financial opportunity in front of me. But I don't know. I could have done a million other jobs as well. So like, that to me is not part of the equation. If it's, can I make this work with what I like to do? And if not, then I didn't. But if I can, then perfect. I get the best of both worlds. And like I say, if I can do right by both the animals and the customers along the way, then good. You hit all the aspects that you need to hit to like be doing this right, in my opinion. So
yeah. Hell yeah, man. Awesome. Yeah, I mean, I guess that's kind of all I wanted to really talk about tonight. I didn't make any new wrap-up questions for you. But I guess we could ask a couple of this. Actually, I don't know if they were the ones I even asked you because you were on over a year ago and I know I
Okay.
changed them a
Well,
little bit. But
let's do it anyway.
yeah, and you kind of answered this one a little bit, but my first one is always like what keeps the fire burning for what keeps you so passionate about the reptiles? Like what keeps you motivated on a day-to-day basis?
I don't know if I can even really put that into words. It's just like so much like it's just my life now, and it's been my life for so long. Like my life and the reptiles are just they're just one and the same at this point.
Yeah.
Um, I think it's to me I've built what I would consider my favorite reptile collection in the world. So like I don't there's no collection would come to me and say one for one I'll trade you collection for collection and I'm going to say yes. And I think that would be a great place for anyone to try to aspire to. I'm not like I don't have the best collection in the world, but like who's anyone to say what that means?
Right.
If you
It's an
can be
opinion.
happy with that within yourself and just like comparing what you like to what you have, then that's where your maximum fulfillment is going to come from when you're not trying to please somebody else or have an appearance online or whatever it is. Like if you walk into your room and you're just maximally happy with what you're doing, that's the goal in this. What keeps me going also is that I'm able to do this professionally, so to speak. This is my full-time job. I don't have another stream of income currently, and it's been that way for a little over a year and a half. So it's, not very long, but long enough to where I could have failed multiple times over in the interim. So
Yeah, I know we talked about this the first time, but like you're still trekking along with that, and that's something to be proud of for sure, especially at our age.
yeah, yeah. No, I
Definitely.
mean, and that's the thing. I just got super lucky to where I found this at a really young age. Like for anyone who
Yeah.
remembers the last episode, like my pediatrician was a snake guy. He was one of the like a high up member of the Chicago Herp Society. So like I was, 5 years old being introduced to herpetoculture, and I was like learning about the industry when I was 8 years old, and like that's when I knew I wanted to be a snake breeder. So like I was working at a zoo at 13. I just happened to
Right.
do a lot of this stuff really young, just like serendipitous moment after serendipitous moment. So that's why I'm able to do what I am now. Is just like I just sped up the timeline like 10 years just kind of by chance, and then me taking the opportunities that I got. So
And even people who get into it now, it's just like you're like way ahead. And some people even think that like I'm ahead for my age because I don't think a lot
you
of
are.
people who are in like I don't even think a lot of people who are in the hobby right now like have the collection on the scale that I might at this age. And I don't have a crazy scale. Let's get that clear. But a lot of people seem to find it later in life when they're adults and a little more settled down and stuff.
Yes. Oh,
Not
trust me,
exactly building it as they're trying to
most of
build
my
their life,
friends most of my friends are in the 35 to 55 demographic. There's a reason for that. There's not a lot
Yeah.
of people who are in their 20s who are doing this on a really serious level. Um,
Yeah.
and I'd like to see more of that too. I think that
Oh yeah.
I'm not really sure why, but I feel like 20 years ago there was a lot more, teenagers, 20 something year old people who were like really hardcore into the reptile industry. So I,
If I
can't.
had to give a true opinion on it, I think it's like cost of living these days.
Yeah, yeah,
I don't
okay,
I think
fair enough.
that has a lot to do with it. And granted, I
Yeah,
am
but
coddled
you
to a
can.
degree I still live at home, so I
Mhm,
am able to save my money and kind of do what I want with this collection the way I want to.
yeah,
Once I move out, things are going to change a bit, but I've built something to a point where um I haven't dipped my own money into reptiles in a long time. I've been kind of it's
yeah,
just
that's
been
awesome.
recycled, so which is nice, and
Yeah,
maybe there will be times where I have to or want to, but point being is like it's hard these days, you know, when you got
Oh, sure.
expensive rent to pay, a mortgage or whatever, and trying to buy these expensive ass snakes at these prices these days. So I think that's part of the reason why, potentially.
For sure. I guess my point is more like I would hear a bunch of stories of, oh, we like went to live on this importer facility and we were all in a trailer together and like roughing it for the sake of what you're doing.
Okay.
Like cutting your life down to the very, very core to be able to do the reptile thing and kind of build off of that, like get experience by like being willing to like live in total filth for a little while, but you're around the right people and doing the right things, making connections. I just and it could just be a case study in the motivation of our generation, generally speaking. But I don't want to offend anybody. We have another guy in the comments, Mr. Alex Myers over there. He's
Alex.
another early 20s mogul in the reptile industry. So there definitely are some of us. But yeah, no, that is definitely a case. It's just not only the cost of living, but the cost of the reptiles as well. I mean, these snakes that we're talking about tonight, like let's say with the scrub pythons, like if a captive bred Moluccan scrub python now is $4,000, a wild caught was like $100 15 years ago. So like that has changed a lot, and definitely can't overstate that one too much. But yeah, I mean, I would really like to see more young people, and the people like around our age in this industry, because when we in 20 years it'll be on all of us to do what all
exactly
the leaders in the industry are doing now. So there's got to be someone to step up, fill those shoes.
Yeah.
And
or we'll just get older, and then when we're in our 30s, there's going to be a bunch of people our age getting in.
Sure, that would be cool too.
Yeah.
No issue with that at all. So but yeah, no, it's definitely, and it's an interesting dynamic. But like if you go to a reptile show, a lot of people are in that, probably you'd say 30 to 50 demographic. I would say that's majority of reptile shows. So I guess it kind of makes it easier to stand out as someone who's younger when there's less people to be competing with in that kind of demographic. But
definitely
there's a million different ways you can look at it. I guess to get back to what you were actually asking me, yeah, it's just what motivates me is just the fact that I can do this, and doing what I can to continue that being a reality for myself. But like not in a way where I'm like, oh, if I don't sell this much this month, I'm screwed. It's like very like a positive get up and go, not like oh shoot, I'm so stressed, I'm so pressured. Which I mean, I could very easily look at it the exact same way. And there's some days where it definitely feels like that. So I'm not trying to say that I don't ever feel that way, but if I can stay like in a good space with it, because it makes me so happy to do it. Obviously things go wrong and you have crushing losses, and the more you care about this stuff, the harder those hard days are. But if you can really focus on the positive things that happen and learn the lessons from the negative, and just have other things in life that you enjoy that aren't just the reptiles, have a little bit of balance. If you can get it in there, that would be that's a recommendation I definitely have, because I've lived that life of your 24/7 life is just doing the animals, and you lose the passion very, very quickly. Like it's shockingly fast how you're like, I hate every second of this. So yeah, definitely don't overextend yourself, because that's the quickest way to hate what you're doing, is to overextend yourself. So yeah, if anyone can attest to that, I'm the one who can attest to that. I've found what I think is a pretty good a good happy medium right now. So
awesome. That's good to hear.
Yeah.
Cool. Now what would you say? I say we'll stay shorter term, the next 3 to 5 years. What does that hold for Steven Kush and his collection? One thing I would like to add, which I'll mention again at the end of the episode, he recently started a YouTube channel, which I have tagged in the description. So yeah, if you see under when you read under the guest, I have his Instagram there, and then it says at Kush Reptile, which you could tap on that, and then it'll take you straight to his YouTube page.
Hell yeah.
So,
Thank you.
but yeah, no problem. Otherwise, what would you say the next like 3 to 5 years kind of holds for you? Any plans in the works to like add stuff, or is it kind of just keep the train rolling with what you got? What do you think?
I mean, inevitably I'll add stuff here and there, but in the next 3 to 5, probably not to a major degree. I think it's really going to be kind of having to do with how the industry as a whole looks. You know, we came off of statistically probably the worst year in the history of our industry. And at least what I'm seeing, what friends of mine are seeing so far this year is already better pretty significantly. So, you know, I'm happy that we're able to, you know, potentially be back in another upswing with reptiles. The one thing that I've seen across the board is like how a breeder fails is just going too big. You know, there have been very successful people who are, you know, in their home or in an outbuilding on their property with maybe one employee who's part-time. Maybe you're even paying that employee with animals, like, you know, just doing like animal trade hours. As soon as you scale up to where you need a staff, and now you're, you know, you're hitting a 5-figure payroll every month, and you're, you know, not only do you have to obviously cover your expenses with your normal living scenario, but now you're paying for utilities and rent or another mortgage, another property, and then the bills run up quick, and now you need to sell 30 grand to snakes a month or you're going under. And then that's exactly what happens with those people. So I'm always hesitant about getting too much more stuff, because like I have a buddy who lives here who helps me out once a week with my stuff, and obviously, you know, Brooke, my girlfriend, helps me out as well when you know, I need it and she has time. So like I'm not totally alone, but I don't have an employee. I don't have a payroll going on.
Right.
So like keeping expenses low while producing enough to get ahead and not to the point where I'm burning myself out. Like I just don't know how much bigger I can go, which sucks, because I you know, especially with colubrids, there are like quite literally dozens to maybe hundreds of species that I'm very interested in. So, you know, like that sucks. So like, let's just say, back to the actual question of 3 to 5 years, hopefully do well enough to where I can move somewhere else and potentially even have a building where my snakes are no longer actually in my house.
Cool.
Have it separate, and then have enough space to do what I fully want to do, and then maybe even the ability to expand a little bit more. Like if the industry really does take a turn for the better, and we're looking at like another, you know, like a decade or so of prosperity in the industry, I could see myself going to the point of having a full-time employee, and that would be it. Like one 40-hour a week employee, but only if it really seems feasible. So, and then, but like where I am now, I can't expand enough to where that would even really be justifiable. So I'm not even thinking about that. So yeah, I would say 3 to 5 years, probably my main goal is to be able to move somewhere where I can actually expand to do, I guess, everything that I'm doing now the way I want it to. But yes, start West Texas herping before you move. Yeah, I ideally do more West Texas herping before I'm no longer in West Texas. Yeah, I'm doing a decent amount, but like not nearly as much as I should be. Part of the reason why I moved out here was to herp, and I've done far too little for the sake of being here. But yeah, I would say the first step on the plan of how to expand this is to, you know, be able to move and build some sort of facility to where I can actually think about expanding, you know, whether that be a bigger colubrid collection, or maybe even get back into some boa species, you know, like some arboreals or locality, you know, whatever it may be. Or if the scrub pythons do really well, be able to breed more scrub pythons. I don't know, kind of take it one step at a time. And, you know, I've run into the issues in the past of just trying to do stuff way too fast, and it's end up setting me back. So just being patient as well.
Yeah, and to go back to your point, just to, I guess we'll drag this on a little bit longer. To go back to your point about some, you know, some people that are failing. I feel like what I'm seeing, and I see a lot of the ball python space because I keep the ball pythons too. I think people are just getting way in over their heads with these collections. And you did say expanding too quickly, and sometimes it's not even people that are hiring employees are getting to that point. It's just like they buy 60 snakes within the first 6 months of them being the hobby. And it's like, whoa, like pump the brakes, pump the brakes. Like, you can't go from 0 to 60 literally that fast and like expect to be able to like figure it out. And then you grow them all up, you get them to size, and now you're trying to breed 40 females and you don't know what the hell you're doing. Like it's just crazy to me.
I mean, the COVID ball python craze, this was an inevitability of what happened. The like complete crash from most angles, I'll say, not all angles, because I do still know plenty of people who are doing well with ball pythons, but the majority of people are not. And yeah, exactly what you said is the case. Like, I'm doing this full time now, but like it took me 13 years of keeping to be able to get to that point. And like I said earlier, I just had the luxury of starting really young. Like if I had started this when I was even 16, no way would I be close to being able to do it full time at this point. And just, what you need to learn about the behavior of these animals and, how they breed, how they cycle. Like someone who's a first year keeper trying to breed ball pythons, you're not going to know how to pick up on follicular development or changes in feeding response, or can tell if a male is cruising. Like you're not going to know. You barely even know how that snake exists just on its own, which you shouldn't. You haven't even been keeping for a year. So like, that's normal. I didn't know shit. I didn't breed snakes until I was like 5 years in. So like patience is the key here. And learning as much as much. I mean, like I was saying earlier, like when I was in like high school, it was just, I probably listened to like a few hundred backlog Morelia Python radio episodes in between the new ones coming out. Like, about stuff that I don't even keep and I probably never will, but hearing how other people think and how they observe their animals, it could be in an entirely different field than what you're doing and what you want to, but just that process of the observation is what you need to learn for your animals. You could listen to a podcast about a crocodilian breeder and apply it to Texas rat snakes, or apply it to Leachianus geckos or dart frogs. Like, the process is all pretty similar across the board. There's obviously differences between different animals, but learning how to experience those animals, how to read them, how to take note of what they're doing, that's what's really important. And that only comes with time. You can't expedite that. It's just impossible. You can't do
100%.
it. So it's all about patience, unfortunately. So
yep.
Much as I wouldn't like it to be sometimes, it's all about patience.
Yeah.
You don't want to be patient, breed rodents. If you don't want to be patient, breed rodents. They don't make you patient. They do what they're supposed to do. So yeah, if you have a low attention span, breed rodents, and you'll make more money than you would breeding reptiles anyway. So that's my suggestion.
You breeding rodents, by the way?
Yeah.
Are you breeding your own? Yeah.
Yeah. Small scale, not enough to feed the whole collection. But basically I haven't, since I've moved, bought anything smaller than a small rat, other than like chicks. But from a rodent standpoint, so I'm just breeding mice and then African soft furs. So no rats.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I do want to breed rats, but I don't want them in the house. And the mice and the soft furs.
I get you there.
So they and it works. They're in one of my venomous rooms that like stays pretty cool. So that helps keep the smell and everything down. And we pony up for like high quality PetSmart bedding that is so worth it. Oh my gosh, is it so worth it?
Yeah.
Gosh, I mean, at $15 a bag, I'd paid $30 a bag for how little it smells. That stuff is incredible. Anyway, yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, but I will say, if I wasn't doing the rodents how I am, I don't think I could do the snakes full time.
Okay. Yeah.
And then also
that's a big piece of it.
Yeah. Like that can't be overstated enough about, like, if you want to be serious about what you're doing here, you are not under any circumstances able to buy retail rodents and make this work. It's impossible. Unless you have money already. That's the only way.
Yeah.
If you're already, if you make a good 6-figure living, okay, maybe you can afford retail rodents, but keep that 6-figure living. Otherwise, you are not going to be able to. So that's the main expense that you got to get down if you want to do this on a serious level.
Yep.
And the best way to do it is to breed your own.
Definitely. All right. Last one for you. So
right.
coming full circle back to colubrids.
All right.
What is like, so I guess we highlighted tiger rats, but I'll say for like
Mhm.
all the stuff you keep, if you were, if you had to convince someone, whether they're a first time reptile keeper or maybe they only keep like pythons and boas or something, like what is your elevator pitch for why colubrids? Why should people get into colubrid?
I think that's kind of what I said last time, but like snakes, like colubrids are like the quintessential snake. There's quite literally thousands of species of them. If you are in the US, that's what you have locally to you, maybe aside from, some of the viperids. Um, the snake industry was founded on colubrids, and that's, obviously ball pythons have taken it to the next level, but it's kind of still like the substrate from which all of this grows. And they're fascinating, the way that they're visually oriented, how active they are, just the variety within the colubrid world is so incredible. um from a breeding standpoint, a lot of them are on the easier side to breed compared to some of your pythons and boas. So if you want a good fun breeding project, they're great for that. Because of a lot of these things, they're a much more palatable pet to sell to a lot of keepers, where a boa constrictor or a scrub python or a retic, you probably should limit your clientele to people who actually know what they're doing. With a corn
Yeah.
snake or a king snake or a pine snake, that's not the case. That can be easily someone's first pet snake. I mean, the variety that you can achieve dwarfs that of any other order of snake in the world by a factor of hundreds.
Yeah.
The mimics that exist in the colubrid world, uh, just I mean, everything. They're incredible. For me, they're probably, if I had to put them in an order, like the third aspect of my collection, just based on numbers alone. But if I didn't have a colubrid collection, I don't know what I mean. I would never be there to begin with. It just would never
Yeah.
happen. Right? I wouldn't have colubrids. It just you know they they're like the epitome of the snake world. Like you can't avoid colubrids if you want to have a full snake experience as a keeper.
Oh yeah.
If you're a snake keeper and you haven't ever kept colubrids, you're not a snake keeper, straight up.
And
So
you're just missing out on so much, honestly.
yeah, true.
Behavior, like just everything, colors, size, all that stuff. I mean, there's so
Yeah,
much you're missing out on, and that's what I truly believe. And pythons are cool, and I'm missing out on
yeah,
pythons. Like I have balls, but like I haven't
yeah,
experienced, I'll call them a real python, like a scrub or a big, a
yeah.
bigger python species.
Even
I
like
have no
carpets and stuff,
experience.
green trees,
Yeah,
they're
carpets.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's just, I don't know. That's why I always like to tell people is just, just keep a lot of stuff, try stuff out. Just keep your mind open to what the possibilities are, because especially if you're a new keeper and you limit yourself, like I'm going to be a ball python guy, it's like, oh, why even do this to begin with? Like, if you're not going to keep lizards, keep geckos and agamids, and do, like, expand the horizons, turtles and tortoises. Like, if you're not, no, if you're not taking the full path to what we're doing here, you're causing yourself such a grave disservice to the amount of enjoyment you can really get out of the herpetocultural experience.
100%. All right, man. Well, on that note, I think that caps off this episode. This was another Great episode. And without your introduction, we still went a good 2 hours and 20 minutes. So,
Yeah,
I think that's still great. Well, when you put two podcasters on a podcast together, we're going to have a long
I was going to
conversation.
say that word for word. I was literally word for word the next thing out of my mouth. That's an easy recipe for a good podcast is put two podcasters on a podcast. It's going to happen. So,
yep. There we go, man. All right. Well, like I said before, anyone who doesn't follow Steven, I have his links in the description below. So make sure you go follow him. But Steven, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, this was awesome.
Yeah.
Always good to talk to you, man.
Of course. Yeah. All right. I'm going to throw you in the backstage. We'll run the outro and I'll be back in a second.
All right. Sounds good.
All right. All right, guys, what another great episode of the Colubrid Corruption podcast. Thank you all so much for tuning into the live chat tonight. Really appreciate the interaction I saw there. I know it's been a few weeks since we did a live episode, but yeah. If it's your first time tuning in, or if you've been here before and you're not already subscribed, please hit that subscribe button. Hit that like on today's podcast as well. Listen to us on all the major audio podcasting platforms. Give us a 5-star review on there. Thank you very much. Once again, thank you to Show Me Reptiles Show for sponsoring the Colubrid Corruption podcast. And lastly, make sure you go check out the Meteoric Serpents Patreon. First link in the description below. Like I said, exclusive content, pre-recorded episodes. You get those early. Cool Discord group chat where you get to interact with a bunch of Colubrid lovers and really learn more stuff and get behind the scenes from me. And plus, it's a way to support the show. So anyone who does that, I really appreciate it. And thank you to all the Patreon members who support me. But guys, that is it for tonight. This was episode number 57 of the Colubrid Corruption podcast. This was with Steven Kush, the part 2 episode. If you haven't listened to the first one, go listen to that too. But thank you all so much. Have a great night, and we'll catch you on the next one. Peace.